What does it mean to be a true leader? Well, my former client, Sarah Reynoso, offers a different and refreshing perspective on leadership that you have to hear. In this episode, you'll learn how leadership is truly a way of being, why it's important to shift from a victim of circumstance to power of responsibility. And you'll learn the power of sharing your truth no matter how potent or polarizing it may be. Sarah is a leadership and empowerment coach for Latina millennials who specializes in confidence, attraction, and identity work. And when it comes to leadership, she definitely walks the walk. This conversation is part of my special 10-episode client feature where I'm featuring incredible clients who inspire me. If you're interested in working with me, head to my website, rubyfremon.com, and click the Work With Me tab at the top to book your possibility session. Today's episode is sponsored by the Mayfair Hotel and Eve American Bistro in downtown LA, home of my annual 3-day event and Amplified Soul Live. This event is guaranteed to provide you with the tools to create influence and impact and strategies to boldly stand out and be recognized for the work that you do. The 2019 event takes place February 22nd to the 24th. For info and tickets, head to www.rubyfremon.com/ASL. Now it is time to continue this 10-episode client feature with Sarah Reynoso. Hey, thought leaders, I am back with another incredible client who inspires me. Now, Sarah, you are the queen of leadership and empowerment. I mean, you even have a crown behind you.
Yeah, I have a king's crown and a queen's crown.
So why is leadership so important to you? I mean, you've basically created this entire niche for yourself where you're a leadership and empowerment coach for Latina millennials, right?
Yeah.
And so why is that so important to you?
The reason why leadership to me is a way of being. And I use the king and the queen archetypes as a way to describe our inner leader. And to me, my definition of a king and a queen who are really tapped into their internal power are powerful, personal beings who are in contribution to the world. It's being in contribution. It's leaving something behind. It's not a form of taking. It's not the stereotypical, self-absorbed queen that we think, pop culture says. This is more about how can we elevate the consciousness of the planet while we evolve and elevate ourselves at the same time? How can we inspire others? And the reason why I chose millennials, particularly Latino millennials, is because I still see a need for one representation in the Latino community, because there's not a lot of coaches or people in personal development space or people who speak for that matter and is a voice for them, inspiring them to rise above any type of narrative that they have. And particularly with the younger generation is because they come into the world from high school, from their teenage years with so many fears. And this narrative of that they are not enough, they're not worthy. And so I want to speak to them in particular so they can start to awaken and realize what their stories are, so they can start to ignite the leader within them and pave a different path for themselves, because it will affect their future.
For sure. And I love that you've niched down like that. And this is great for our listeners to hear too, is the power of niching down. I mean, for everyone listening, that was so fucking clear. Like, you know who Sarah works with. So that's the power of niching down. Now, Sarah, that is also partly your story, right?
Yes. Yes, definitely. I had this self-worth conversation. So I grew up in a very Hispanic neighborhood. I didn't realize what my cultural identity was until I was put into an environment as a young adult where I was the minority. And I worked in a very wealthy, upscale area for, a doctor doing front desk work. And I remember seeing women like me who did domestic work. So they were the nannies, they were the
Mhm.
housekeepers, and I was called girl. Like I heard somebody tell the doctor I worked for, "I'm going to go make an appointment with your girl." And I
Mm.
remember just feeling like, and I'm sure she didn't mean it in any way that was culturally offensive, but I interpreted that at that moment. So I took responsibility for my own narrative. But I remember telling myself, no, like I feel like I'm more than just this, you know? And
Mhm.
so that really ignited the leader within me to really create a different story and to really go after my future and rise above any type of limitations that I was placing on myself.
Mm. I love that you said rising above the limitations that you placed upon yourself, because that is um, you showing the world that you take ownership, right? It's so easy. It's so easy. So I'm, obviously I'm a person of color too. For those of you listening, if you didn't know that, I am. But it's really easy for us as women of color to say that there are limitations imposed upon us, which in some way, shape, or form are correct because of the way the world perceives us. But what's more difficult is taking it a step further and saying, but here are also the limitations that I've placed upon me because of the perceptions that society has placed on me. And by owning this, I am going to change my narrative. Like, that is so much more difficult. So is that a lot of the work that you do with your clients?
Yes, I like to do identity work and really empower people to reframe their narrative from that victim of circumstance to that of empowered responsibility.
Mm. Victim of circumstance to empowered responsibility.
Mhm.
So why don't you walk us through what that actually looks like?
So yeah, so I've been hearing a lot and seeing a lot of people of color go on social media or just in different talks talking about the racial divide and systemic racism, which I believe yes there is. I feel like we've evolved as as a society, as a country. We've come a long way, and we still have more evolving and more work to do and more in educating people. But I can't help but notice that sometimes these voices sound angry.
Mm.
It's like we want to punish people who are not minorities or people who we feel as though they're suppressing us.
Mhm.
And what I want to encourage people of color who feel maybe angered or feel like they're in their position due to any type of governmental system that's in place, or maybe somebody who, was not of color who put them down in a way, maybe inadvertently, who knows? But I want to encourage people to take those experiences that they've had, because I feel like we all have a story
Mhm.
regarding our cultural identity and how we felt, low at one point, and to take that and really use it to ignite the leader within us, for us to pave our own path to rise above that, because we can easily get caught in this mentality of people are out to get us. But that doesn't serve us, that doesn't help us. And how is that leadership? Why don't we take that and use it to fuel us, and at the same time educate people who may commit any types of faux pas without meaning to? Something I learned from you, Ruby, that you say a lot is people, like, they do what they can with what they have, with what they know.
Mhm.
So we have to really look at people who are committing cultural faux pas and really, come to them with like gentleness and grace and educate, when people commit cultural appropriation or say things that are off color, instead of responding with anger and with kind of like this disempowered place, to really educate them and come from a way that is loving and gentle to educate them. And that's how we're going to heal, rather than see this division, because we're just perpetuating division when we speak out against the cultural majority in anger.
Mm. So is then a part of your work in empowering these women to be that leader, is part of that to then also help them bridge that gap?
Yes, definitely.
That was a quick yes. You're like, fuck yes.
Yeah, just to bridge that gap, and I see even, women within my own culture, um, there's just a lot of tendencies for women to settle for less than. A lot of it does have to do with our cultural upbringing. Women are taught to be more in the service role. We're more domesticated. We're taught not to speak up for what it is that we want. And when we do, it's misinterpreted by cultural others as us having attitude. Latina women have a stigma. When we speak up for something we believe in, it tends to come across to other people as, oh, we have an attitude. So what I really want to do is I want to fine tune that and also inspire women to really go after what it is that they truly want. It's within their reach. Yes, they can start a business if they really wanted to. Yes, they can go, after that career and hold executive positions in companies if that's what they really want. Or they can be the best mother or significant other in their family if that's what they really want, instead of dimming their light and settling for less than what it is in any area of their life.
Hmm. I love that so much because, settling in worthiness, so many people in our society settle for less. And as leaders, and I see you as someone who works with leaders as well and is helping to pave the way for more leaders. Leaders have that divine responsibility to be what they teach, which means that the worthiness issues and the putting an end to settling, that all begins within them. In order for you to be an effective leader, Sarah, for your clients, you need to be what it is that you're teaching. And I know as a fellow leader and coach that can often get tough at times because we're still human beings. We're still going through our own shit. What I love about you is that you have the weekly show on Facebook Live. It's called Real Reflections, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's absolute real talk. You talk a lot about, you talk to people and you have great interviews, but you also aren't afraid to kind of share some real hard truths. So with all the shit that can be thrown at you on social media, why do you choose to show up in such a bold and real way? Because most women in your position would be too fucking scared because of fear of judgment or fear of what other people are going to think or fear of being seen as not perfect. So why do you choose to show up in this way?
I believe that it takes a person who really takes a stand for what they believe in to stand out. Like, you have to stand out if you truly believe in what it is that you're saying, what the message is. So, like for me, for example, I talk about relationships. I talk about the casualness in dating relationships these days. Why? Because I'm experiencing, as a single woman, being in the dating scene, and I see how men are, and I've heard stories of how women can be as well in the dating scene and what they're doing to attract a partner. And to me, I'm like, wow, there's a sexual double standard, so it's okay for a man to do certain things and it's not okay for a woman, or when a woman does it, she has labels.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on and I spoke about that, how, men, you're worthy too of holding yourself in a high place. But I also said, this is for people who value a deep personal connection with someone.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who value casual sex and multiple partners, and there's no judgment. But what my message is to those people is, I ask them to look inwardly to see, okay, is this really what you want? Are you doing this to mask your fear of intimacy? Are you doing this to numb out? So I spoke out about that because I don't see enough people speaking out about that. I feel that men don't have a voice, and I know I work with women. I will be working with men down the road in the future too, but I really feel like men don't really have a voice. And what I'm hearing, and this is going to even sound controversial too, but in the Me Too era that we're living in, and I believe that there's so many women who are finally coming out and speaking up, and I love that. I too am a woman who's saying, yeah, this happened to me as a child, and I didn't realize what was happening to me at the time. But it's also creating fear in men where they feel like they don't know how to speak to women, or they're afraid to even compliment a woman or tell her she's beautiful because he's thinking, well, she's going to think that I'm harassing her. So I see both sides of the coin. Really what my work is seeing both sides, and how can we empower each other and ourselves rather than attack the opposite sex or attack people of other cultures, etc. That I really speak about, like how sometimes women do set up men to fail in that regard. You know, they dress a certain way, but yet when a man looks at her, she's like, don't look at me. Why are you looking at me? But it's like, okay, but how, as a woman, can we take ownership of how we show up in the world so that we're supporting our men, not, setting them up for situations that they can fall flat on their face about, for example. That's just one example of the things that I go on online and talk about and share about.
Right. And I think it's important for everyone listening that I know that there's some of you who are probably pretty pissed off right now. There are probably some of you who have probably already stopped listening. And that's okay. You know, what Sarah is showing in her being is that she's unafraid to share her opinions and her truth, because this is the way that she chooses to lead. And I can assure you, Sarah, and everyone listening, that by doing this, you cut out all the people who are not meant to work with you, and you attract those who are, because those who are going to be aligning with your beliefs, or are going to be seeking some of that in their life. So it's not easy to share opinions like that, to share strong opinions like that, because you're going to lose followers. There are going to be people who troll you. There's going to be people who say shit, who want to debate. What are your thoughts on that?
Something I learned from you too as well is to address all the quote unquote haters. Address everyone. Don't run and hide. But for me, it's addressing them in a way that heals. Mm-hmm. Addressing them in a way that I see what you're saying, and this is where my come from is. But I also honor and respect your opinion as well. But that's not going to stop me from speaking out, because there's so many people out there who really, like, they don't know, they don't have their own voice, and they look for external validation and they listen to the opinion of other people. My whole thing is speak up and speak out. And thank you for sharing that, because I do have to say to your listeners, I learned a lot of this from you, from working with you as your client, from having followed you before I decided that I wanted to work with you. So I have evolved under your coaching to be able to be bold and speak truth more powerfully than a year ago.
Mm. So like if we were to rewind a year ago, how are you showing up back then?
Pretty much I was still doing Facebook Lives, but they were not with the potency that I'm doing now. They were very much just to make people feel good, very love and light.
People pleasing.
Yeah. Let me inspire you.
Yeah, sharing only what people want to hear. And one of the things that I do a lot of work with my clients around this is, like, if you want to get your message heard, you have to first of all speak it, and understand that, like, in an overcrowded social media landscape where everyone is just out there quote unquote inspiring and sharing love and light and all the other fluff, like, yes, it's fun to watch an inspiring video once in a while, but it's those videos that offer some sort of powerful, or like you said, potent insight, something that's going to get you thinking, whether you agree with it or not. And that is what true thought leadership is all about. So it's been amazing watching you rise into that at the phenomenal level that you have, Sarah, because you're right. Like, you can see the potency of your lives, your Facebook lives that go every week. If you guys want to watch, I'm going to share the links in the show notes. But the potency of those I mean, it's like snowballed. And it feels like you're now showing up as the leader you've always wanted to be, but perhaps at one time was afraid to be, or even didn't know existed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely been an evolution, and I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been the really quiet people pleaser with the low self-worth conversations, and then I took it to the opposite end where I would say things out of anger, or I showed up very rebellious in my younger years. Rebelled against leadership and policy and procedure, and so I've been on both ends. But what I've really learned a lot is to how to fine-tune my voice so I'm able to speak up, but speak up in a way that empowers myself and others instead of tearing down myself and other people around me.
I love that. It's like you're coming from what was most likely a very reactionary place.
Yes.
Yeah. She's nodding. Yes. To one where you're really owning your being and the way in which you're showing up, and not just being responsible with how you're now choosing to react, but um, everything has intention. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between what I deem as falsified leaders versus like real leaders. Falsified leaders react a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the real leaders, they're the ones that act from a place of intention. And
Mm.
I feel like that's where you are now coming from, is you're acting from a place of intention. And even what you were sharing about the Me Too movement, you could have shared that from a place that was reactionary. You could have shared that from a place that was like upset or angry or frustrated, but you shared it from a place that was very confident and true for you. And that resonates on a different level.
Yeah, I've, even just to share a more recent example that just happened to me this weekend. So as I mentioned earlier, single in the dating scene, and I received a text from a gentleman that I forgot to respond to. I just got caught up in my day. So I think he assumed that I ghosted him.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had texted him a couple of days later to confirm our date, and then I saw, oh shoot, I didn't respond to his text. I apologized, but then I didn't hear from him for several hours. And it's literally up to 2 hours before we were supposed to meet, where I sent him a text just to say, you know what, I acknowledge my breakdown. I apologize that it took me so long to respond to your text. However, if you are no longer interested in pursuing this, I honor your decision and I wish you all the best. That got a response from him.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, wow, okay, yeah, I did think you ghosted me, and that was immature on my part. And really what I should have thought was maybe she just got busy with her life, which was the case. But my point in sharing this is how many people out there, when they feel ghosted, because I felt ghosted too for a few hours, how many of us go to, well, forget them, screw them, they're lost.
Mm-hmm.
We get really angry and our ego is triggered because we feel rejected. Or some of us either ignore or we send messages like that to the other person wanting to say, well, you're lost, well, forget you. But I really had to really channel my inner queen, because that's what I talk about. That's I coach women into inner queen and leadership. And I thought, what would a queen say? How would a queen respond to a man who has not responded to her text from 8 hours ago confirming a date? So I tapped into that and I sent it, but I said it in a way where it's like, look, if you decide that you opted out, I honor your decision.
Mm-hmm.
I honor your decision. I wish you all the best. And so, can you imagine, though, the power of honoring people's decisions when they don't choose to follow us? The power, even speaking to thought leadership, when we speak on what we truly believe in. And yeah, not everyone is going to like what we have to say, but can you imagine the power and the healing and the bridges that will remain if we actually approach people from a place of empowerment? Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I'm choosing to honor how you feel and your thought process in this. And at the same time, I'm choosing to honor how I feel and what I believe in. So I'm going to keep marching on rather than attack the person for what they think and what they believe in.
And that is so important, because if we get, as leaders, if we get caught up in the attack mode, that only drags us down and it takes us away from our message. And that example, albeit it was a dating example, thank you for sharing. I feel like you need your own podcast on like stories of a single Latina in the city where you just share these stories. But that was a great example of, and again, I just see like this difference between reacting and acting with intention, which is really how you're positioning empowerment. And that's powerful. And for you to focus your work on that and really helping people come from that place, acting with intention, feeling empowered, being the queens that they are, that is such important and needed work, especially in today's day and age with everything going on with the race conversation. You're really providing a needed outlet for Latina women. And you're representing by being what it is that you teach.
Thank you. Yeah. And I am a firm believer that how we do one thing is how we do everything, something I learned in personal development work. So yeah, that could be applied to thought leadership. That could be applied to not getting the job. That could be applied to so many areas, not being invited to the wedding or the barbecue. But, it's like, how can we channel our inner king or queen and how we respond to people who we perceive as rejecting us. Again, we perceive them as rejecting us. Can you imagine, by speaking up and coming from an empowered place, can you imagine the misunderstandings that can be cleared when we give people the opportunity to respond to us? You know what I mean? So I feel like breakdowns in communication and misunderstanding is the number one reason why so many relationships fail. And if you look at the ripple effect, look what it's causing in our world on a grand level. Countries are going to war. The need to be right. These breakdowns in communication. And can you imagine, though, how we can change that ripple towards elevating the consciousness of our planet and create healing in our world when we choose to own our feelings and our triggers and communicate and speak from an empowered place? Like, who is going to respond angry to us when we're saying, I hear you and I acknowledge you and I acknowledge how I feel and I choose to honor how you feel? Who's, maybe a small percentage will still be angry, but I really highly doubt that somebody who really wants to resolve the situation would respond in an angry way. So it's just creating an opening for people and creating a space for people to really think about how they respond, and that inspires them to step into their leadership and ignite their inner leader in how they respond as well.
Yeah, super powerful to model what it is that you want to see in the world. And for you, it's like having these constructive conversations versus reactions that just break everything down. So Thank you so much. Sarah, we are at the end of the episode, and I'd love to know if you had any final thoughts to share with our thought leaders today.
Yes, I'd love to share a final thought. To truly stand for what you believe in, you have to be willing to stand out.
I love that. You know I love that. I'm all about standing out. Sarah, why don't you tell our audience about your free gift, and then also how they can stalk you online?
Yeah, so my free gift is a PDF of 6 steps to unshakable confidence. It just really breaks down like what it takes to, it's like a roadmap to how to own this confidence that a lot of leaders need to have. Also, people can follow me on IG. It's at Sarah Liz Reynoso, Sarah with an H, L-I-Z.
I'll put everything in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah. I always have guests like spelling out their names. I'm like, don't worry, it's going to be in the show notes.
Yeah. And then also on Facebook, Sarah Reynoso or Sarah Liz Reynoso, either way. My personal profile page is now public click. So I really don't care. Anyone can friend request me.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. It has been an absolute honor to be your coach, to witness your evolution and your transformation. And I'm just so excited to see what else you create in this world and just experience the ripple of your impact. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ruby, for asking me to come on here and speak. And thank you so much for everything that you've coached me into, your powerful punches that, I needed at that time, but it really, helped me evolve into the woman I am now. Thank you.
You're welcome. And listeners, she's not talking about physical punches. Okay. Metaphorically speaking. So listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this special client feature on today's Thought Leader, where I'm challenging you to rise up, speak up, and create a movement. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow, where I'm going to be featuring another incredible client and thought leader who inspires me. Download my free online training at rubyfremon.com/CPR. And while you're there, check out my upcoming 3-day event in Los Angeles, Amplified Soul Live. Sarah will be there too, so you can meet us both in person. The link for that event is rubyfremon.com/ASL. If you have any questions for me or Sarah about our conversation today, please reach out to us on social media. My handle is at @IamRuby. Again, all the links are going to be in the show notes. This episode was sponsored by the Mayfair Hotel and Eve American Bistro, home of Amplified Soul Live 2019. I will see you all here tomorrow for another special edition of today's Thought Leader.